because we weren't sure how many people we would get on a Monday night. And we think this is valuable information we could certainly share with the wider community through other venues too, so.
Sunny or Diane or Marty, did you guys get the?
Dawn, you got muted.
Did you by chance get the email I sent out about a reminder to join tonight?
I don't
I wasn't on it after 5
remember
o'clock.
when it was.
Okay, I just sent it like 10 minutes ago, just as a quick reminder in case anybody sees it.
Oh, no, I just got home from the barn.
Okay. Well, we can wait another couple minutes in case people are still joining.
Because she hasn't put her video.
Okay. Ooh, it's Susie. Dan.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Susie.
Hi, I'm gonna keep up me on non-video for a minute. I'm making coffee cake.
Oh, man.
I'm in my kitchen.
I'm gonna be at her house.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, actually, I'm gonna mute too, but I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. How many in total are we expecting this evening?
We have no idea. Because
Okay.
we put information out on various venues. There was supposed to be a big reminder that went out yesterday, but it didn't go out. Long
Sure.
story.
No, I mean those sort of things inevitably happen. I get it.
Is that-
We've been promoting it for weeks. We have a flyer
Yeah.
that went out to lots of different churches, and Dan Wright, it went to the church, Chagrin Valley Church of Council of Churches.
I sent something to Chagrin Valley Times. I don't know if they put it in. It's up to them if they are willing to do that.
Yeah, and we sent it to our whole church, hundreds of people, and we have a small group of about 100 that focus on environmental or social justice issues, and so we sent it to them a couple times. So we'll see. We just don't know. Right now, we've got about 14 people.
Tricia put it out on Facebook as well, which can sometimes get a fairly wide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's already 5 after. Katie, do you want to get started or should we wait?
Why don't we get started? Because I can mumble up for a couple minutes as well about why this should be important to people. Although it obviously is, or you wouldn't be here. But we're gonna start out with a prayer. Lord, grant us the wisdom to care for the earth and till it. Help us to act now for the good of future generations and all your creatures. Help us to become instruments of a new creation founded on the covenant of your love. Amen. Good evening to everybody, and thank you for joining the panel discussion. 2020 was a strange year for the environment. Many people working from home during the pandemic with reduced driving helped to clean up air pollution in our cities. Los Angeles lost its perpetual brown haze and had the most days labeled good air quality since 1980. That's 40 years ago, with much less population in cars. Pretty amazing. However, during the same time, I received an email of what I thought was a shot of a hazy moon in a dark night. It was actually my daughter Sky at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. She lives in a half-mile east of San Francisco Bay and usually had fresh breezes coming off the water. Not then. Smoke was billowing over the mountains from raging fires and an acute lack of rain. Even the vineyards were burning, a new scenario for the area. My daughter works remotely from home and did not go out the door for almost 2 months. She literally didn't go out the door. Her husband attempted walking 3 blocks to the grocery store in a professional grade mask and arrived home short of breath and hacking after 3 blocks. This is an ultra marathon with a pretty good set of lungs. These two situations are back-to-back reminders that, like LA, we can clean up the environment if we put our work into it. But the reality is that climate change is already at our doorstep, reminding us to get busy. And it scares me when I talk to my kids living out there. It's a tough situation. Climate change is real. Did you walk the parks and wooded trails this year? Ride your bicycles around the area? Go camping? If so, you joined the burgeoning group of people across the country who rediscovered the beauty of being in nature and its calming effect, especially during COVID. Which scenario do you want to hand down to your children and grandchildren? Brown, hazy, polluted skies driving you inside, or fresh air and renewing nature? Using geothermal and solar energies can reduce carbon pollution by using less fossil fuels and save you money on your electric bill. It's a win-win situation for all. Tonight, we have two professionals who will guide us through the use of geothermal and solar energy systems for your home. I chose them because their companies came highly credentialed by the state and by their clients. So in case you're wondering, guys, this is not a haphazard choice. Wait a minute. They are Sam Necklace, one of the co-founders of Geothermal Professionals, and Gatsby Bodnar, a representative of YellowLife, a solar energy company. We also have commentaries by Kevin Tweedy, you like that, Kevin? Who built a house specifically using solar energy, and Monica Nowak, who added geothermal energy to an all-electric house 10 years ago, enabling them to live in a beautiful environment. We're going to try and record this presentation tonight so that we can share all the information at a later date. Consequently, we will mute the audience until we take questions. You can enter questions in the chat box as you think of them, and our speakers will answer them at the end of their presentations. There's a lot of information coming at us tonight, but we're hoping to tie it up by 8:30. Our first presenter is Gatsby Bodnar with YellowLife Solar Energy. Then Kevin Tweedy will add a commentary on his life in a solar home. We will then have Sam Necklace with Geothermal Professionals, and now located in Middlefield, speak about the geothermal area. At the end of this, we'll open up questions, and I'm sure they'll have lots of great answers for you. So with that, Gabby, do you want to talk about solar energies with us?
I would love to, and thank you so much for your introduction, Katie.
You're welcome.
My name is Gatsby. I'm a solar, my proper title given to me by YellowLife. I am a solar energy consultant. Doesn't that sound fancy? Doesn't that sound wonderful to have that on a business card? I would like to open up the conversation here once I'm done. I really enjoy the aspect of my job with YellowLife to tell people more so the real world and the truth of solar energy. I think that there is a lot of misconception, a lot of maybe exaggerated facts about solar that are put out into the internet and out to the world that can oftentimes just kind of set it can kind of set people's imagination on fire when it comes to this sort of technology. And it is amazing. It can do quite a bit of things, but I want to speak more towards what it can actually do for our own households, our own personal economies as individuals within our families. And that's kind of what I do with YellowLife is really work with homeowners, work with families to determine what is going to be best for them, not just completely fill out their entire home, even though it could support a large amount of solar panels. You know, what is the most appropriate and what makes for a financially gainful installation. So a little bit quick background about me. I have a dual degree in renewable energy technology from Lorain County Community College, both wind and solar energy. Primary application there is a background in more so a technician type role, right? So I understand a lot about the installation practice, both for wind and solar. I've had some amazing experiences, some great heights, some fantastic views working with wind turbines. That's definitely a cool thing I've had the experience to work with. But learning about solar and really discovering the scalability of this technology, I think that set my focus a little bit more pronounced. I was able to really gravitate towards the idea of, this can be put really anywhere on the planet and generate electricity in a meaningful way and provide support to places that are remote where they otherwise wouldn't have any type of electrical connection. That really spoke to me. So yeah, to get into it, solar energy works with photoreactive solar cells. So when you think of a solar energy panel, you think of a rectangular, maybe a navy blue, kind of a speckled look with like an aluminum frame. Those are kind of like the old school solar panels. The new stuff these days are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. You can think of it as like a black on black, almost like a flat screen television. The reason for them being colored black, the black is going to absorb more of a larger spectrum of visible UV light. And so we are able to retain that much more energy using a black color in comparison to blue. That speckled look that you're seeing on solar panels, that is from just a different type of silicon. And the raw material that silicon is made of is sand. So that's where we're deriving all of these solar panels that are being manufactured internationally by the thousands every day. A lot of times people think that there are like a conflict mineral or like, something that we should be concerned of in terms of its non-renewable resource at the end of the day. There is enough sand on this planet to manufacture solar panels for, I couldn't even speak to the length of time. And moreover, those same solar cells that are being manufactured today, there is technology on its way to recycle those same panels to be reused again and again over time. So to get into it, the way that solar is generating electricity, we are using visible UV light. So this is understanding what we see during the daytime. So long as there's daylight, you are going to generate solar energy. A lot of times people think that, a day like today, cloudy, dreary, drizzly, that it's all a wash. You are in fact going to generate some solar energy. Granted, it's not going to be as much as you would see on a beautiful sunny day, but it is some. So even in our worst case scenario throughout the year, there are electrical gains to be made. To speak on how that energy is integrated with your home, solar energy, when it is generated on the panel, is going to be on a DC signal. If you are at all familiar with the way that your home is connected with your utility is providing an AC signal. So the energy from the solar needs to be inverted. So this uses a specific device known as an inverter, name implied there, to make sure that it is synchronized with your home's electrical connection. So we can get into kind of the weeds there on how that's done. It's really just a matter of circuitry using kind of some high-end electronics to make sure that those frequencies are matching and that your home is converting that DC to AC. And all of that is essentially being interpreted right where your meter is connected with your utility. So in the scenario where you have solar installed on a home or a business, what would happen is your meter, as it functions right now, and in a couple of years back, I believe even like a decade or so ago, that before it was a digital meter, this was an analog. So you can think of this this analog meter was only reading what you are consuming. If we were to have solar installed, a new bidirectional meter would be installed. It's going to read both your consumption and then take away any generation. So you're only billed on what you are using throughout the year. Anything that's left over, say you generated more electricity than you used in a given month, that is going to be given to you as a credit. And that credit can accumulate month over month. Now, the way that it works here in Ohio is a little bit different than how it operates with other states, say in like the West Coast that have a little bit more progressive, more favorable solar energy policies with their utilities. So here, it's not so bad. We only get about half of what makes up our effective rate schedule from the utility as a credit. So you can think of it, if you got anything remaining at the end of the month, you're going to be given a credit on about 50 cents on the dollar. So it's not like it's not the best, it's not the worst. It's not something you want to have happen all the time. If you're really retaining your full investment dollar for dollar, you want to be like just under that 100% to really effectively retain your full investment there. And that is kind of where the rubber meets the road with what I do with YellowLife, is really nailing down, getting the specific data, what I would do in a scenario if I'm helping a homeowner like Robin and Katie. I'm collecting their electricity bill. I'm analyzing that bill, finding out when throughout the year they're using the most amount of energy. And then I'm really suggesting a system that is going to speak to those specific months. So namely, if you're using a lot of AC, those are going to be in our summer months, right? You're going to have a better return on your investment, or a better reflected energy saving if you happen to use more electricity in our solar relevant months. So that, I suppose, is quite a bit to digest in a full paragraph there. So I would like to take a couple of steps back before I do ask for questions and any kind of dialogue you guys want to share. There is a lot of misconceptions about how to really invest in solar energy in a smart way. So sometimes people will have the misconception that there's a lot of rebates or grants that are still remaining from like the early years of the mid 2000s. Unfortunately, here in the state of Ohio, a lot of that stuff has gone and has since expired. As of 2014 and 2016, the state of Ohio has really dropped essentially all of its solar energy incentives. All that's remaining is that relationship that I've described where the utility will credit you. That's called net metering. The other incentive that's available is a credit-based system. You can understand utilities in our region have a portfolio whereby they are required to achieve a certain benchmark of energy through renewables. Solar happens to be one of those pillars within that portfolio. And so they will grant a small amount of money towards homeowners so that they can fulfill that quota. It's not a whole lot of money to write home about. I'd say right now it's probably about $10 per megawatt hour. That is a ton of energy. That it takes a long time to accumulate that much energy. So again, I guess summate the whole reference there. State of Ohio has a long way to go with regards to reinventing new incentives for homeowners. What I would like to see, and something that is current here in Ohio, is a specific loan program that helps people to afford solar. So if you have like a home equity or like a home improvement loan through your own bank, there is a specific program that can help shave about a 1.5 of interest on a given loan. That's my first recommendation whenever people are shopping solar. Check in there, see what is available that you can shop through with your own bank, someone that you have a working relationship with. Because I will say, as solar is gaining a lot of momentum, it is attracting the attention of some nefarious individuals. I will say there are some snakes in the grass when it comes to these businesses out there. So be careful. If you're shopping solar, do your homework, do your diligence as a shopper, as a homeowner. Make sure that these guys that you might be talking with are accredited, have good ratings with BBB. And then, yeah, ask about their financing. A lot of times these types of loans, they might appear attractive given the interest rate that is advertised, but there's always a catch with this stuff. So just be wary as you're shopping out there. And I'm happy to be kind of a, granted I'm biased, right? I'm gonna point towards YellowLife as the solution, but I kind of find it as just a personal thing for me professionally to say, there's a better way to do this without having to, really bend completely over just to afford this technology. It can be done in a meaningful way and something that's equitable for everybody. So yeah, to that, I'm sure there's a ton of questions, and that's what I'm more so excited for. So I kind of wanted to keep this just informal to open the discussion up and to have questions. So please feel free, anything and everything as far as you've heard from solar, I'm happy to help out.
Kevin, would you like to speak as a homeowner who actually built a house specifically for solar? How that's worked for you?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I don't have any prepared remarks, but yeah, I installed my, we bought an old home on a big piece of property right across the river from the leaches, right on the Sugarland River here. We renovated it, we super insulated it. We used the passive home standard to try and make our house super tight, triple pane windows and really tight doors and things like that. We had no access to natural gas. Our only real choice was propane or electric. I did not want a 500, 1,000 gallon bomb outside my house. So I went with all electric and super insulation. And at the same time, we put in 36 solar panels. We have since added another dozen. We now have 48 in total. We do spin the meter backwards regularly. We do frequently get probably 6 or 7 months a year, maybe 8 if we're lucky, we get negative bills from First Energy. It does irk me to buy the energy at X and sell it to them at half X. And I highly recommend anybody considering doing a system consider storage. And I also recommend that when they do that, when they do a system, that the storage and the solar the PV panels get put in at the same time. It's by far the most effective way to do that. If you're in a situation like myself, I want to add storage and it's becoming more reasonable every year to add storage. I'm going to pay a premium to get somebody to come out and add it into my system as opposed to what I would have paid if I could have done everything at one time. So any of you now thinking about a system, please consider storage as well. And obviously the part of the incentive for doing that is that half of the energy units that you're saving, or that First Energy is not paying you, that's a savings for you if you can store your energy and use it at off hours. I'm hoping that when I go get storage here, that I can go maybe 9 or 10 months a year spinning my meter backwards and not have a bill or a negative bill from First Energy. To follow up on your comments, Gatsby, about the state of Ohio, I also have an electric vehicle, and I now have to pay $200 a year for my registration, a premium of $200 a year. Ohio is not just neutral on it; they're anti solar energy and alternative energy, and hopefully at some point in time they will become a little bit more progressive here. But I'm not holding my breath. I do think there is still federal incentives, though, are there not? Is there still not a tax credit for that, Gatsby?
There is. So on a federal schedule, you do have a 26% tax credit to look forward to. That is, of course, understanding that you have the ability to take advantage of that. So not everybody has that sort of tax liability where they can, where they essentially have that burden to be alleviated with that credit. And if I can, really quick, Kevin, I want to echo your remarks. Doing what you can to insulate your home. everything that you can do ahead of time to make your home more energy efficient before you're making an investment in solar energy, I give it 5 stars. I love to hear when homeowners have taken on those initial steps to really recognize, before I'm gonna, because solar is a huge investment. It is, I would say, relative to, say, your lifestyle, it is oftentimes equivalent to what would be as much as what you would pay for like a car, right? So if you're kind of affording a particular lifestyle where you might have a nicer vehicle, you can kind of in a transference maybe kind of understand I might have to have more solar panels than my neighbor down the street who might drive kind of more of an economy vehicle. Kevin, it sounds like you, given your mention of 6 to 7 bills out of the month being in the negative, sounds like you are very energy conscious. So very good for you.
Quite. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But Kevin also has an electric car.
Yeah, that's incredible. If you're able to even have that level of energy consciousness and still retain that, that's amazing. That's great.
So I have 2 questions at this point. One was, how long do solar cells last? And then there's one for you, Kevin. Where are Kevin's cells?
Awesome.
I.e., probably did you have them on the roof or wherever you place the panels, I would guess.
Well, I bought a big piece of property, so I had I had plenty of room to play with alternative energy. I did have visions of putting wind here, but we have way too many trees to be able to put any wind energy harvesting in. But we have all of our panels mounted remotely. They're beside the house, they're on the ground, and I have them angle adjustable. So every month I go out there with a drill motor and I change the angle 8 degrees to maximize my use. They don't track the sun. It's kind of a halfway measure. It just by changing the angle, in the winter time, the sun is very horizontal. So I've got the panels at a 24-degree angle. In the summertime, when the sun is very high, I've got it like at a 72-degree angle. So there's a big difference in the angle of the panels from one month or from the either extreme, but it does help me to harvest the maximum amount of solar energy I can from those cells.
So to address, I think, thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate that.
Oh, sure.
So to address you, Gatsby, this is a question, how long do solar battery cells last?
So the battery specifically, that's a good question. It's difficult to say. So this is all involved in how conservative you are with your energy use with what's remaining in your battery bank. Right now, battery storage technology is pretty well at a precipice. We are seeing the emergence of lithium-based batteries pretty well take on the lion's share of what is being installed on a residential and commercial scale as far as battery storage technology. There's definitely others that are contenders and are up and comers, very cool stuff that's happening with battery technology. Right now, manufacturers will warranty these specific products. So like Tesla, Generac, LG, those are like the big guys in the industry right now. All of those are going to have a standard warranty of 10 years. And I have no reason to believe that they are going to have any less performance than that. But it's important to understand you can think of it just like your phone. The more you're on it, the more you're using it, and whether you're flipping through it or scrolling throughout the evening, inevitably you're like, oh, I'm at 40% battery and it's like 3 p.m. we got to do something about that. So yeah, it's difficult to say. I would say in a real world scenario, I have no reason to see why these new lithium batteries wouldn't last at least 12 years.
Nice, that's good to hear.
As far as the solar panels themselves, those are more like 30-year guarantees, though.
Right. Yeah, the solar panels themselves, that's a very interesting question. So we have gone, I would say we're probably about 3 to 5 generations of manufacturing process and quality assurance protocols for solar energy. In the early days, so to kind of draw some local reference here, at NASA Glenn Research Center, there are some panels that are manufactured back in the early 80s that are still creating solar energy. Now, granted, they have lost a significant amount of their original efficiency. So they are making quite a bit less energy than what they would have, on their day of birth, right? So that is something to understand. This is something that maybe not everybody realizes. Anything that is electrical is losing a tiny bit of its rated performance every time that you're using it. So, just like anything in life, there's no free lunch. Not everything necessarily is going to retain its full potential after you are using it over time. To draw back to what is the kind of anticipated lifetime for a solar panel today, I don't think that it's a far stretch to say that at least 40 to 50 years of performance and like a relevant lifetime before you need to swap out components is going to be true. So to that, I would say solar energy, as far as I'm concerned, on a home should be like a once in a lifetime investment.
Okay, I think we've got one last question here. You mentioned that solar panels are actually going to be recyclable, that they're entering into that realm at this point, the materials?
Yeah, so I mean, when you break it down, it's raw materials. It really turns back into either the silicate substrate, which is what is giving it, you can think of a solar panel, what it's made out of. You have an aluminum frame, you have a glass top sheet, you have a substrate of silicate. So you can think of it as like a peanut butter and jelly, and the jelly has a little bit of fruit in it, so some preserves in there. That fruit in this instance is going to be like heavy metals, so things that are going to be photoreactive, like you can think of some of them as like cadmium, mica. What are some rare earth elements that are also mixed in? Different types of like heavy particulates of iron. All of those things can actually be through process separated and then reintegrated with a new electrolyte substrate. So a new set of silicate, resuspended, and put it right back out into the market. So granted, this is like pretty high level manufacturing and recycling process, but because of the scalability of this technology, there's a high level of investment that's going into this. So while it might not be so apparent in the United States, places like Germany, India, all even into Africa have a lot of investment that is going into specifically the recycling of photovoltaic cells.
What about the disposal of the batteries? Because I know, as Kevin mentioned, I'm seeing much, the people that I talk to who have solar kind of even recommended that a battery or two might be helpful, especially in our part of the country, maybe.
Yeah, I know the variety of battery that we're really familiar with, like our automotive batteries, right? Those are lead acid variety batteries. This is really kind of toxic stuff, and it is chemically very difficult to kind of render it in a state that like this is safe to dispose of. And then moreover, how do we appropriately recycle this? So there's a little bit more involved, a little bit at the end of the day, a little bit more money involved in order to properly recycle those. When it comes to lithium ion, that process becomes that much more easier, more so because its chemical composition is a little bit more straightforward. So it's not mixed with a bunch of different types of electrolytes, a bunch of different types of dopants that are going to activate that battery cell. So things are becoming, just as they do with all electronic products, just more streamlined, smaller, more effective, more affordable.
Thank you. And
Absolutely.
I think the thing to remember in all this, yeah, there is a cost to you, but there's a return on the environment. There's a return on your electric bill. And as I spoke earlier, People are spending a lot more time outside. They're rediscovering that nature has its own healing. And what kind of world do you want to hand down to our kids? Do you want it full of particulates and carbon footprint, or do you want to give them a clean world? So
So Katie, I have one more question, because Northeast
Okay.
Ohio is so filled with trees. My yard has huge trees all around the house, so I'm not sure solar panels would work. What do you say to that?
To that, I would say, how much do you love your trees? I really enjoy, I was thinking about it earlier today. How great is it to watch a tree, you know, as you own a home, to watch a tree grow, to go from a sapling to a big, powerful tree. You know, that is something to pass on. I say keep the trees. I think that they're just as important as solar energy. It all comes down to how much you value what is on your property, what kind of character you really appreciate out of it. If you're on the side of financial return and gain, it's up to you. But I say keep the trees. That's my opinion.
I think,
And then the cloudy Cleveland winters, how does that affect?
Right. No, that's the gigantic elephant in the room. Obviously, we have that to contend with. But year over year, if you look at I guess the relevant sunlight compared with some of our sunnier states, that you can even compare to, you know, like the state of Florida, for instance, you know, they, even in their summer months, it gets pretty cloudy. They have a regular, you know, a thunderstorm just about every other day there in the summer months. So all equivalent, you know, it is definitely still an effective means to save money and to generate clean electricity, even here in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind too is the panels are much less efficient in heat.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually produce less power in July than I do in May. And it's just a matter of it's so hot that the panels are only performing at like a 70% effectiveness compared to 85 or 90 in May. So the heat in Florida or Arizona has to cause a huge derate to those panel performances as well. I mean, I think even when it's cloudy, like today, I still generated a decent amount of electricity today.
Mm-hmm.
I have to thank you for your question, Don, because this is a great introduction to Dan Fant, who is no longer Sam Nicholas. And he's going to talk about geothermal, which could be a wonderful solution for a yard with a lot of trees. So, oh, look, it says Dan now. So Dan, guess we should unmute you here, or he has to unmute himself.
Yes.
Dan, you want to unmute yourself? We'd love to hear about geothermal at this point. And when you're talking, then we'll field some questions.
Yeah, and Sam is still here, so you're not deprived.
Oh, hey, Sam.
Hello. Hello
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Hey.
So yeah, and hi, John Leach. So
Oh, you know what, Dan, let me just start out. I've got a testimonial for you. Monica Noah could not be here, but she wanted to add that she was able to move into a beautiful all-electric home just east of Chagrin because of geothermal. She and her husband and kids really love this home. The only way they could manage the bills was by doing a geothermal system. And they've been very, very happy with it. They installed it 10 years ago. They pay less than 25%. They get at least 75% off their electric bill. And this is electric for the whole house. They have they have a small generator in case the power goes off. But for the most part, they seldom have to use it. So, you know, it's just when we have these freak weather storms, which is a good reason to combat climate change.
Right.
So she
Good.
thanks you for allowing her. And she said many of her neighbors on the street also have geothermal because that's the only way they can handle an all electric house. And it's a beautiful thing to have. So thank you for that.
yeah, well, thank you and Monica. So where would you like me to start?
If you want to just give people a general idea what geothermal is about,
Sure.
as Gatsby pointed out, there's a lot of misconceptions about solar. I think geothermal is in many ways the great unknown. So
It is. So solar, wind, and geothermal. Okay, technically those things produce power. What I do is a ground source heat pump, AKA geothermal. Geothermal heating and cooling or a ground source heat pump consumes power. However, a geothermal system has been now categorized along with solar and wind for the federal income tax credits.
oh, nice.
Yes. So whatever happens with solar and whatever happens with wind, we are now the beneficiary of whatever those credits are. But geothermal is what we call it, is our specialty is residential heating and cooling. We are circulating water into the earth to capture in the wintertime heat. That heat from 55-degree water is then exchanged with through a heat exchanger, a coaxial heat exchanger. So look at it this way. You have a pipe carrying water at 55 degrees washing over a pipe carrying refrigeration. We'll call it at 20 degrees. The heat exchange will draw maybe 7 degrees of heat out of that water. And 27-degree refrigeration is then compressed to say 180-degree liquid, which is running through a coil in the ductwork.
That's where it gives it off.
So that's how you convert 55-degree water to 100-degree air. It's not a one-to-one exchange. So when you have air moving through your ductwork in your home over a coil at 165, 170 degrees, and you're discharging about 100-degree air. So I'm able to heat your house through manipulation. The liquid is then going to get decompressed back to a gas, get rewarmed by the water that went back down to the earth to regenerate the heat. So we're basically trading 7 degrees as it flows through. The pitfall with geothermal is design and installation. If I put in a system too small and you get into February and it's -5 degrees or it's 10 degrees, whatever it is outside, and your system is running all day and all night, I'm extracting more heat out of that water than that earth can replenish. Now your system is going to drop temperature. Then I'm going to have an unhappy customer. So we have to drill enough boreholes in the ground, put enough pipe in the ground to circulate enough water deep into the winter to give you what Sam and I are after is static or close to static return water temperatures to the geothermal system when you need it the most. So I'm going to overbuild my system. And I kind of like the gentleman talked about, it costs you a lot more money to add storage to your solar system. Same thing with geothermal system. You're better off spending the extra money to get the extra loop in the ground than to add it later. That's a mouthful. Where can I take it from there?
Dan, do you have to have a large area of property to construct this?
Well, we're doing a job right now in University Heights. Sam, how big is that property?
Backyard is about 55, green space, about 55 foot deep and 25 foot wide.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So we have 2 drilling methods that we use. We have a directional drill, which we require a minimum of 1 acre. We have a vertical drill, which makes a borehole 4 inches in diameter, goes down 200 feet. We require 10 foot of spacing per 200-foot borehole. So in a 10 by 10 area, I can put in 800 feet of borehole. So there's really no restriction.
I have another question for you. Is geothermal available for AC only?
You have no choice. You get heating and cooling with geothermal.
Okay. And then you can choose what you want to.
All you have to do is tell your thermostat what you want. We have a heat exchanger that has a reversing valve. Air conditioning is heating in reverse. You put a turkey in your refrigerator at the end of Thanksgiving and you're blowing warm air at your feet for the rest of the night. That's what we're doing in the wintertime. In the wintertime, we're sucking the heat out of the earth. We're concentrating it, we're blowing it in your house. In the summertime, we're pulling the heat out of your house, we're putting it back in the ground.
So in looking into this, I noticed that when you put these systems in the ground, they have quite a long lifespan. Is that correct? The piping?
I'm going to venture to say the one thing I do that's not green is your earth loop. It is high density polyethylene.
Okay.
It'll probably be there 1,000 years from now. The earth you're not exposed to UV. We're not exposed to excessive heat, and high density polyethylene will last a lot longer than I will. We don't mechanically join the pipes, they're fuse welded, which means we melt the walls of the pipe together. And so, and there's no moving parts. We're just circulating water through, on average of 15 gallons a minute under pressures of 30 PSI. So there's no stress on the piping system. And there's really nothing down, we're in anaerobic soils, it's dead. There's nothing alive, right? There's nothing chewing on the pipes at those depths. It'll be there forever.
That's amazing. So I've got a question.
Can I say something?
Yes.
This is John Lee.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to find Geothermal Professionals about 8 or 9 years ago, because I had an oil furnace that we had in our house and we needed to replace it. And I was introduced to Dan, and I didn't know anything about geothermal, and I was very, very impressed with how Dan could express what he wanted to do. And then his company came in and put our system in, and we have lateral loops, not vertical loops, in around our property. And I was spending almost $10,000 a year on oil because we had an oil system, and we have substantially reduced. I mean, it's nowhere near what I pay now, and it has our house is warm, and it's. I would never build another house unless I used Geoprofessionals if I could, if it was going to be the same place, but certainly for that kind of system. And for anybody that is curious about it, I think it's the greatest kind of heating and air conditioning and economically and ecologically fortunate system that we have. So I'm really very, very supportive. And Dan and his partners have done a super job.
Well, thanks, John.
One of the things you missed, Dan, is when I introduced in the beginning, I mentioned that I picked both your company and YellowLife because you have outstanding credentials. You've got both by the state and both by all your clients. So good reason for why people appreciate everything you've done for them. We've got a couple more questions here. One is forced hot water is not an option, correct? I'm not sure what that means.
I'm not sure either.
Oh, okay.
I
Hey,
think
Gabe,
it's if your house, like our house has, it's not my question, but maybe our
Gabe
house
Fant.
has heat that's forced water through like a radiator system.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, and that is an option if it's in-floor radiant heat. Baseboard heat requires water temperatures that I cannot produce. In-floor radiant heat requires water temperatures that I can produce. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. Does geothermal use a lot of electricity to run the pumps? And I'm thinking from Monica's perspective, they're saving so much on their electrical bill that.
So we have, majority of my customers are existing home retrofits. My happiest customers in terms of saving money are customers that are in oil, propane, and all electric homes. In 2008 to 2012, if you were on natural gas, you were absolutely delighted to go to geothermal. Natural gas dropped dramatically in price. It is anticipated it will go up again, but I don't know when. And so your return on investment is not quite the same. So in terms of cost, how much is it going to save you? Depends on what fuel you want. It depends on the age of your house, depends on how well your house is insulated, depends on the winter temperature, indoor temperatures. But I will say that Ohm's law is what I use. Volts times amps equals watts per hour. And your average 5-ton system, if it runs 8 hours a day or between 6 and 8 hours a day, and that's quite a bit of runtime, by the way, you're going to spend $100 a month for heating and cooling year round. If your house is a little tighter, you may only average 4 or 6 hours a day runtime. So really, I mean, we're putting systems in Shaker Heights, Cleveland Heights, houses that have no insulation, 1920s build, and we're also putting them in new houses. And so it's going to vary on the build.
Can you install this system if you have a well and a septic system, or will it interfere?
No interference. If I'm drilling vertically, I am going through aquifers, but we have a requirement to be so many feet away from a water well. And if I can't be so many feet away, I'm just not going to do the job. If the yard is big enough, 1 acre or more, I'm going to go directional drilling, which is going to be at depths of 8 to 20 feet. It's minimally invasive, low impact. I'm not interfering with aquifers. It's my preferred method of drilling. I think it's better. Vertical drilling is actually more expensive, but I have to do it in small lots like Lakewood, Cleveland Heights, University Heights, Shaker Heights, Pepper Pike sometimes. And if I'm in bedrock, I have to go straight down. But I really love directional drilling. It's very neat and clean and great. It's a great job in terms of thermal conductivity. The ground at 8 feet is the same temperature as it is at 200.
Interesting. What about trees, tree roots? Does that interfere with the system?
Well, again, we're drilling at anaerobic depths. We're at, your tree roots, your feeder roots like nutrients, oxygen, and water. And at 8 to 16 foot of depth, we're in no man's land. There's nothing alive at those depths. We're going to, we can drill underneath a treed area, a forested area. We can drill underneath. I don't like drilling underneath septic systems. I'll avoid it if I can, but there isn't any interference.
And Diane Toury, I may ask you to explain this. Can you use this system with a ductless mini splits?
No. A ductless mini split is its own system. It's actually an air source heat pump. A geothermal system, I mean, could I tie it into it? Yes, but I'm not going to. different animals, so to speak.
Let me add another concept here. It was very expensive to put this system in. And I balked at it at first, but then we had the tax credit. And with the tax credit, it worked out well because within 7 years, I figured that we had absolutely paid for the entire system. And so now we're living with the savings that was created with the system. So it's, and I understand that's still active.
It is.
Yeah, Monica has been going for 10 years with her electric house, and she said at this point, they will be getting payback this year. So it's for a young family with kids, that worked out really well.
Well, where we're headed as a globe, we're going to see more power production on an individual basis. And that's how we're going to win this battle of CO2 reduction. Geothermal, because it consumes electricity, is a good partner for somebody that wants to achieve net zero. So if YellowLife is installing a power producing appliance, solar panels, it can run our system. If somebody builds a house, and has a proper design, thinks about the layout of their house, orientation, and you can become net zero by going all electric and by installing solar. You can achieve net zero with some thought process. The people that call me and ask how they can become net zero, and they have multiple refrigerators and freezers, multiple appliances, 5,000 square feet of house with cathedral ceilings, it's not going to happen. You know, it's really, you really have to buy into the concept of you're really, you know, minimizing your heat loss, you know, really thinking about what you really need. But, you know, our fight against CO2 is going to really happen on an individual basis. And so we're along with what YellowLife is doing, we're kind of joining that fight. But it's going to be individual power production. And so if you can, with a solar panel, produce power to run your appliances, store power, and then what you're not using for storage and consumption, you're selling back to First Energy. And First Energy has a very attractive net metering policy today.
So I have a question about that individual effort. I would say, you know, this is just off the top of my head, 90% of the people cannot afford either solar or geothermal. So how can we do it as individuals? I think we need to do it as, you know, a nation. I mean, I think we need the infrastructure, we need the costs to come down so that the average person can afford these. So when I hear we have to do this on an individual basis to become net zero, I don't think that's possible. We've just got too many people that can't afford to do these things.
Okay, good question. So we're going to get off topic then. Because you're right. But if you build and insulate a house well enough, you can heat it with a sterno stove. You can live with very little consumption of energy with the right design of a house. And in suburbia, we're living in 2,500 square foot houses, 2x4 construction. Some are 2x6. If you built a house with 2x4s, but spaced your walls 12 inches and blew in insulation and made a 12-inch wall instead of a 4-inch wall, you can actually live through a winter with the heat of a light bulb. It's going to take creativity, not money.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in if I could really quick.
Please.
Yeah.
So to answer Dawn's question, I see it as a multi-pronged solution here. So we've got a couple of obstacles in order to achieve a. Do I think that a completely renewable energy based format for this country exists? Without a doubt. Will that take as long as it did in order to build our industrialized nation as it is today? No, not that long. Maybe like half the time. I think maybe like 25 years time, if you were to look back in this country and to say, once upon a time, we used to use coal and like raw oil. We used to use barrels of oil to create our energy. People would be like, that's incredible that things were so crude then. The rate of electrification of this country is happening at such a pronounced and exponential effect that we don't have any choice but to follow suit and create a new infrastructure, a new grid that is based on these formats, just based on the demand alone. So while geothermal, wind, solar, all those things are fantastic in their altruistic element, having the ability to provide a clean source of energy and to grant a reduced CO2 impact, it actually comes down, and what is going to be the driving force to what ultimately is the mechanics of this whole system is the dollars and cents to our own economies as individuals, but also to these corporations, these entities that are our utilities. They see the writing on the wall. And to go back to your original question, I saw it here in the chat, so I did want to bring that back. Why do I think that this country and Ohio specifically aren't doing enough? It comes down to the way that we've been doing business. To put it in so many words, we have very old, long-standing relationships with entrepreneurs, with investors that have just been doing business this way, and they have a large enough bank where they can continue to afford to do things the way that they are. There is still a demand for coal and for natural gas and for fossil fuel-based energies. As long as that demand is there and there's a monetary forward and an incentive for these businesses to pursue those platforms, that'll continue to happen. So we just happen to be in a part of the country that we have cheap energy. We can afford to forego solar for this amount of time. I find that tragic because I love the Great Lakes. I love knowing that we have such a commodity here, and it breaks my heart to think like, yeah, but the people that really run this state as a business don't feel the same way, so at the end of the day, I point my fingers at the corporations.
So
I think it's an interesting. Oops, am I talking over? So I think that's an interesting angle on it. Energy companies in and of themselves can make that a tough road. I have a brother that puts solar panels on. He lives in San Diego. You would think that he would be paying very little because most of the time he does not need to draw except when his whole family piles in.
Yeah.
But the energy company there every year is charging a larger and larger fee to be connected in to the grid, which he may need a couple times a year or during June gloom. And because they want their money, they don't want to cut back. And I think without national and state direction for energy companies and saying, no, this is what we want to do to support our environment, it's a tough road. That was a doom and gloom answer. Sorry. He's a little frustrated.
So this is Robin. I have a question about carbon fees. In other words, right now, we're not paying for the true cost of our carbon sources of energy. If we really were paying for the cost of removing that carbon and those pollutants, it would be much more expensive.
Yep.
So is there any chance that we're going to see Congress eventually get to a point where they charge the true cost of those energy sources?
That is like That is I feel like that answer is very futuristic. I feel like the answer to that question comes through a policy that is beyond the progressive or frugal nature of our current Congress, and really looks at our society in a more holistic approach. I don't know if we're there culturally yet to digest something like that.
Yeah, but there have been corporations that have been taxed with becoming carbon neutral and then being able to sell their carbon credits off to other companies. So it's not an unknown concept.
Yeah, the carbon tariff or the carbon tax concept, I do think that fulfills a footprint in policy moving forward. I do think that concept has a place. To answer your question, Robin, of when and where and how, I can only suspect it has to happen, whether we like it or not. You know, within the next generation or so, I would hope that we've made some headway in that direction.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have more questions or comments for this group? I think I'd like to end it with.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I have kind of a dumb question, but what happens with the snow on the panels in the winter?
To answer that question, you can think of it much like your car's windshield. If it's cold enough, if it's snowy enough, it's going to stay there. If the sun comes out, and just like it will on your car's windshield, it'll likely be one of the first surfaces that start to melt and slough off that snow. So yeah, in the winter, I would not recommend, and I always tell my customers, do not go on the roof in the wintertime. That is absolutely dangerous, and it is not worth the savings that you might gain for that hour of sunlight in the middle of January. It's just not going to work out. Don't do it, too risky. So
that's another reason why my panels are ground mounted. I do go out there with a long handled push broom and I help it out. It melts pretty quickly once you get, if you've got 4 or 5 inches of snow on there, if you can get all but the ice off of there, it melts really quickly. So I do go out there occasionally, but I'm on the ground. I've got a 10-foot handle on a push broom and I push it off of there carefully so I don't scratch the panels.
Yeah, well, we know because we've had 6 or 8, 10 inches recently.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank you, Dan, with Geothermal Professionals, and Gatsby from YellowLife. You've given us actually a lot of hope. Kind of ended with a doom and gloom. It felt like that for a moment, but honestly, everything I hear about your companies and your clients, you've given us a lot of hope. They're already cutting down on the carbon footprint as well as their electrical bills. It is a win-win situation. And hopefully this has inspired other people. One of the reasons I was excited to take this on is because we had talked about doing an alternative energy source for our house, and it had just not gone down that road and researched it. So we're hoping this is being recorded, that this can provide information for other people in the future as well. And I appreciate everything all your questions and all your presentation information.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. It's very informative.
Thank you for sharing.